Thank you so much to everyone who is here. I'm going to be talking about the first holiday without a loved one. And this is by means.
And then the other thing is journaling really.
An exhaustive list or presentation, but we're going to go over a few things. And first, I'm going to share my screen. This is a graphic that Andrea actually brought to me, and it's very appropriate for what I'm going to go over. So I'm going to share my screen and also read it out loud. So this is called the Bereaved Holiday Season Bill of Rights. It's by Tanya Lord. It says, as a grieving person, you have certain inalienable rights that cannot be taken away from you by those who may not understand. When grieving during the holiday season, you have the right to feel what you feel and to be politely honest with others about it. If you do not feel merry, cheerful, or otherwise festive, then say so. The right to not share your feelings if you would rather. I am fine is okay to say. To not go to parties or family gatherings where your loved one and your grief are not welcome. To take time for yourself, whether this is a walk alone, a day in bed, or some other momentary escape. To cry when it hurts, to laugh when something is funny, and smile when you're happy, and to not feel guilty about any of it. To have your loved one remembered in a way that is meaningful to you. To change your mind over and over during any get-together, event, or party. You may not know what you can or cannot handle until faced with it. To change traditions when necessary or desired. Traditions are supposed to bring comfort, not distress. To enjoy your holidays, your loved one is going to be celebrating with you. It doesn't mean that you have forgotten or being disrespectful. Living life is a wonderful way to honor them. To try again next if this year does not turn out the way you want. So we'll be sharing this Bill of Rights with you in our newsletter and also in the follow-up document we're going to put together. So as I said, I'm going to be talking about the first holiday without a loved one. Facing this first holiday season after losing a loved one can be one of the most challenging and difficult and confusing times in grief. So I'm going to talk about ways to mitigate the difficulties that holidays can bring. And this doesn't have to be the holiday season. It can just be any notable holiday that's difficult for you. But oftentimes the holiday season, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's is very particularly difficult. So first and foremost, before speaking on anything else, it should be said that it's very important to consider seeking mental health assistance if you're struggling. This can be done through local therapists or even on Zoom these days, online therapists. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, someone just put in the chat they can't hear me, so just trying to speak louder. I wanted to note that people shouldn't be disheartened if they're not connecting with their therapist right away. Oftentimes it takes a couple therapists to connect, and that's all right. You need to feel safe and connected and like you can relate to a therapist. It's key that you do look for a therapist who is experienced with grief-related struggles. That's how you're really going to feel comfortable with them. And of course, the Virtual Death Doula Network also offers support for anxiety related to death, dying, and grief. We'll be including the link to that resource in our newsletter and the document, but it's also on our website. It's easily accessible. Just something to note. So continuing on, there are a few things to keep an eye on when a particularly challenging holiday is looming. And this anxiety can really well up well before the actual holiday. It can start months before. That's why I use the word looming. Take note of unhealthy coping mechanisms around this holiday, such as excessive drinking, food consumption, or underconsumption or overconsumption. Overeating and undereating are common side effects of grief and anxiety and stress. They're usually worked out naturally with time, but it's something to keep an eye on because some of these behaviors can linger and become very unhealthy and dangerous. Reckless behaviors are also something to keep an eye on, such as substance abuse, as I mentioned, or reckless driving. That might not be something you would think about, but sometimes emotions really drive us to do reckless things. That's why it's recommended to have a trusted friend or family member support if possible, one who knows that this holiday is hard for you, difficult, who can offer you assistance. Anything from needing just a ride, like come pick you up to do some errands or do some cooking for you, whatever you might need. And as always, journaling, meditating, self reflection through conversation are all healthy activities that help you understand what might be going on behind the scenes. And I also want to say that it's important to go easy on yourself and do your best to not worry about others' expectations. Expectations can be really, really stressful during this time. Just try to let go of that if possible. If you usually handle some of the logistics of getting the family together or preparing a meal or decorating or doing activities that take your time and energy, recognize that these stressors might just exacerbate this already tender time for you. So there might be another way around it. Just asking for some assistance from other people or just simply dropping the task without needing to explain to other people why you can't do it. That's perfectly fine. It might be the other way around though. Perhaps you might feel comfortable and more connected to that loved one through these activities, in which case nurture that and connect yourself to that warm feeling that you have while you're doing these things. Maybe it helps you to feel close to cook their favorite meal or to put up certain decorations that you used to put up together, that kind of thing. Again, it's best to remain communicative with your family and friends in an open and honest way about not partaking in a few activities you normally would. Listen to yourself. That's the big takeaway. It's okay to take a step back for the time being, from activities. But it's also important to remember that withdrawing completely for extended periods of time could have the adverse effect. So balance is key. Listening to yourself is key. Journaling, even making like audio recordings of yourself talking could help if that's a medium that you prefer. Remembering and sharing. Sometimes it might feel like not talking about a loved one is the best thing to do and the most comfortable thing to do. And while it might feel scary to address the absence of someone, sometimes that's just the thing that brings about connection and healing. You can laugh and feel joy and even cry together over the memories of someone who's no longer there. Some people even create like a place setting for the person that's not there, a little altar or something in the home to say, you know, you're gone and we're looking at that and thinking about that, thinking about you. You might even choose to honor the individual by creating a new tradition to add to the old. This can be as simple as, again, toasting to the person, talking to the person out loud, singing a favorite song or hymn, um, anything like that to kind of bring a family and loved ones together in remembrance. So I just want to in conclusion, say that while it might feel uncomfortable or painful celebrating this first holiday season without a loved one, remember that it is possible to find enjoyment and joy in the holiday, and be gentle and quiet with yourself and try to listen to what you need and try to be patient with yourself and revel in the little moments of peace and happiness and beauty that the holiday can bring with loved ones. And that's all I have. I didn't say who I was at the top like I was supposed to because I got a little flustered about, I thought Daniel was going first. So anyway, I'm Emily. I'm the co-founder and chief innovation officer of the Virtual Death Doula Network, and I couldn't be happier to be amongst these people. talking about this topic, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you more in the Q&A. And now I believe, you know what, I'm not even gonna say who's next because I might be wrong. So someone
I'll
help
take
me.
care of that. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Emily. And thank you for sharing your wisdom in these practices. Beautiful. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, who is going to talk to us about navigating grief during the holidays, no matter how long it's been. She's also one of the co-founders of the Virtual Death Doula Network. You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Willow. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, everyone, for being patient. I'm Andrea Sugar. I am one of the co-founders, the CEO, and a doula at the Virtual Death Doula Network. Emily described some of the challenges of a first holiday without a loved one. I usually speak professionally from my doula heart at these events, but today I'm going to share my personal grief experiences during the holiday from my heart of hearts. The holidays can be so hard. They can be hard because of your family, and they can be hard because you have no family. Both are true for me. I no longer have a biological family to spend the holidays with. And when my parents were alive, Thanksgiving in particular was a really difficult holiday. It was fraught with serious trauma and heavy emotions every single time. I'm not sharing this because I want or need sympathy, and I'm not sharing this because I feel sorry for myself. I am sharing this in the hopes that it will provide a glimpse of understanding and connection to those that need it or at least open to it. There are so many of us with no family for the holidays, and it hurts, plain and simple. Sometimes it hurts to see how much family other people have. And that hurt doesn't mean that people aren't happy for their friends who have it. It's quite the opposite, but it still digs in deep to that wound, at least for me. The holidays make me feel so twisted sometimes that I don't know what I want, but I do know I'm not alone in that feeling. After the death of both of my parents within a 4-month period, what did my grief look like? What feelings did I experience? What thoughts, what behaviors? I was messy. Some days I couldn't move, or some days I would burst into tears out of nowhere. But initially, however, I couldn't cry much. It came in jags and then nothing. I felt lost, I felt scared, and I even felt relieved too. I had a challenging time digesting that I was alone, an orphan. And then I felt guilty for thinking that. Can I be an orphan and be sad about it as a grown adult? I was really confused. I also had an exceptionally complicated relationship with my mother, and this made things even harder. I remember about 2 years ago, which is 4 years after my parents died, having to leave the grocery store because I started crying hysterically. I was in the store and I saw a woman from behind. Her hair looked just like my mother's hair. I froze. I felt hysteria and tears quickly welling up and spilling out. I had to drop my basket and exit the store as quickly as possible because I was sobbing. As I exited, I glanced at the woman again. I saw her from the front. She looked nothing like my mother. Except for the similar hair, my mother looked nothing like this woman I had seen. Despite the passage of 4 years and the complicated relationship we shared, the grief I experienced in that random moment was profound and overwhelming. I was shocked that despite all of the time that had passed and all of the work I had done to heal, I could still be so overcome by my grief. I bring this story up as an example because it highlights the nonlinearity of grief and how it's possible to be impacted years after a loss, seemingly out of nowhere. The holidays and the focus on family and loved ones that accompany them are ripe with opportunities to be unexpectedly reminded of loss. And I share this so people know there's nothing wrong when something like this happens. Even having the professional skill set associated with being a death doula, my own experience with grief and dying continues to move through me, and at times it comes out unexpectedly. So what helped me? How did I cope? What helped me then? What helps me now? They are pretty much the same things. For me, yoga and meditation, unapologetically crying it out on my yoga mat. I was allowed the space there to grieve without judgment or question, and unapologetically crying it out, honestly, wherever I was, even the grocery store. Doing it my own way, allowing it all, giving myself time and space to feel whatever I was feeling without judging myself. This was the most helpful thing for me. And time, letting each day be each day, and sometimes only each moment. allowing myself to be vulnerable and experience these emotions. Interestingly enough, this is so much easier now. I am more accepting of the waves of grief and the emotions that come with them, and I'm okay with the discomfort. What wasn't helpful was being so hard on myself for sometimes feeling like I was somehow grieving wrong, because it took a long time for me to really let it out and flow with it and to embrace myself as I moved through it. What would have helped would be to have someone to hold me and let me sob, but I'm not sure I knew how to do that, how to let myself be held in that way. This is still true almost 6 years later. I know how to hold myself. I know how to hold others, but I don't know how to receive comfort like that very well. How interesting that the thing we want the most can be the very thing we don't allow ourselves to access. I'm still working through this grief. I miss my parents every single day. I know now that whatever comes up as I continue to move with my grief is okay. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. I'm not weak. Grieving is not weak, no matter how long it's been. I am under no obligation to just get over it because a certain amount of time has passed, and neither is anyone else. I also want to be very clear that it is possible to be 100% aware and grateful for all of your blessings while simultaneously feeling alone, wounded, lost, and heartbroken. They are not mutually exclusive. It is okay to hurt, to sit with the pain, to acknowledge it clearly. It's okay to be sad and not okay. It is also okay to let in joy from wherever it may come. In fact, this piece is crucial and sometimes one of the hardest. It's okay to not know what to say to a friend who's having a hard time, and to acknowledge that and say something like, I don't know what to say, but I love you, or I'm here for you if you want me to be. Even as simple, I'm thinking of you, I know it's difficult, is wonderful. Also, please don't be offended if you don't hear back right away or at all. Sometimes the discomfort is so paralyzing, but those little messages mean the world and make a big difference. So I say this not only for myself, but for all of us that are connected through the wounds that tend to rip open even more this time of year. With all of my love, gratitude, and comfort, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Andrea. And Daniel is going to talk to us about self-care and caring for others during the holidays.
Yes,
And Daniel's also a co-founder of the network.
Hi, yes, thank you, Willow. My name is Daniel Shaw, and I'm a doula at the Virtual Death Doula Network and a founder and the Chief Information Officer here. So, yeah, thank you, Andrea and Emily, also for the lovely stuff that you've led in with this. So, yeah, I'm going to here to discuss about how to support friends and loved ones experiencing loss and end of life during the holiday season. And odds are, if you are in the position to support a friend or loved one experiencing loss associated with a recent or expected end of life, you're likely being challenged by the same circumstance. And this brings up the first rule of caring for others, which is to make sure that you're practicing self-care. When reviewing when reviewing caring for ourselves and others, it's important to nurture ourselves in 4 important areas: so physically, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. So, starting with physical care. Good physical care is important at this time. Our body is the house that we live in, and just as our house requires care and maintenance to protect us, our body requires that we honor it and treat it with respect. Our quality of life depends on how we take care of ourselves. Common physical responses to loss can include trouble sleeping or low energy. People grieving may have trouble getting to sleep, or even more commonly, trouble getting back to sleep after waking up in the middle of the night. So encourage friends to rest as much as possible and to do their best to get enough sleep. For those struggling with low energy, remind them that their unusual fatigue is a natural mechanism intended to slow them down and encourage them to care for themselves. This is particularly important during the holidays when we might feel obligated to engage in activities and preparations. It's okay to tell your friend to take a break or to decline invitations they aren't up for attending. Appetite can become erratic at this time as well, and while one may be less interested in food than usual, our bodies continue to need a supply of energy to keep us going. Offer to cook a meal for your friend or loved one. Take them to a restaurant for a change of scenery as well as bodily replenishment. Exercise is an excellent way of supporting both the mind and body. For those with a regular exercise practice, encourage them to stick with that practice. Offer to go for a walk outside. In addition to being good exercise, walking is an excellent meditative or mindfulness practice that can be very soothing. Additionally, walking in nature can be tremendously healing, and many communities have areas that are known for holiday decorations. Find some near you that you can walk or drive through if that won't be too overwhelming. And if the weather isn't cooperating, take a stroll through the mall, visit a local library, or find your way to a museum or art gallery, many of which are free. Moving on to emotional care. For many people, physical contact with another human being is healing. It has been recognized since ancient times as having transformative healing powers. So hug your friend or loved one, hold them, put your arm around them. But some people struggle with touch, so be present and simply sit with them if direct contact isn't an option at the time. Encourage massage therapy. Perhaps book a session for your friend or loved one as a gift. Music can be very healing to learners because it helps us access our feelings, both happy and sad. Music can soothe the spirit and nurture the heart. And all types of music can be healing. Rock and roll, classical, blues, folk. Does your friend play an instrument or sing? Help them find the time to try these activities again soon. There are a multitude of ways to share music during the holidays. And this is a wonderful opportunity to remind someone that it is okay to experience joy. Sometimes crowding varied thoughts and feelings in one place can make them feel more manageable. So writing and journaling is fantastic. You can offer to create a grief map with your friend or loved one. And I've got a little demo here for this. I've done it up on the computer. Please do not feel that you need to do a grief map on a computer. This is, again, just for demonstration purposes. So let me get this up and share my screen. Let's go. All right, so simple grief maps start with a large circle with grief in the middle, labeled grief. And this sort of represents the thoughts and feelings associated with your loss. And then from that, we start drawing lines, radiating out and connecting them with a feeling that has contributed for this grief. For example, anger. And then start jotting down notes to associate where is that anger coming from. For instance, I'm angry that you left me. Fear is another common emotion that can be associated with grief. How will I go on without you? Guilt. Guilt's a big one. I feel bad about feeling joy if that feeling comes up. I feel bad about feeling relief if that comes up. Plenty of opportunities to feel guilty. Confusion. It's very common to not be able to think straight, feel straight, everything just sort of unknown. I don't know if I can take care of my family. Sadness is another common emotion associated with grief. My heart hurts, my world feels empty. And as possibly counterintuitive, joy can come up also. Again, all feelings are going to move through you during this time. And you might say, this feels foreign and not okay. And that's okay too. Again, this is, you know, a chance to work through this. And there we are. Thank you for bearing with me. Right, so that's the process of going through the grief map. This grief map doesn't need to look pretty or follow any particular rules. The important part is the process of creating it. And then once you finish, you hold space and allow your friend or loved one to share and explain it to you. Yeah, the holidays can create added pressure and sadness, and this activity just might be able to create some space to help process those emotions. The intellectual ability to think or to absorb information, make decisions, and reason logically is just as disrupted by grief as emotions are. And our mind can be in a state of disorientation and confusion. This is called grief fog, and it's a very real and common phenomenon. Remind your friend or loved one that it might be helpful to allow oneself to just suspend all thought or purposefulness for a time and to just be as the mind just catches up with and processes the new reality. For social care, the death of a loved one results in a very real disconnection from the world. When you reach out and connect with your friend or loved one, you're beginning to help them to reconnect. By being aware of the larger picture, one that includes all the people in their life, you can help your friend or loved one to gain some perspective. Recognition of being part of a greater whole can be empowering. So keeping your heart open and connected to your friend or loved one will help them to reconnect to the love within themselves as they heal. It's okay to lean on friends and family, particularly this time of year. You can offer to be a grief buddy, someone that your friend can talk to about their journey. Make a pact with your grief buddy to call each other or to reach out frequently and consistently. and promise to listen without judgment. Commit to spending time together. You might arrange to meet once a week for a meal or a snack with your grief buddy. And holiday get-togethers are a part of the season. Commit to being present for them, either in person or virtually, as you navigate the holiday social calendar. Finally, for spiritual care, if your friend or loved one is feeling particularly disconnected, encourage them to approach the world with the openness of a child. Help them to embrace the pleasure that comes from the simple sights, smells, and sounds that greet your senses, and maybe do the same for yourself at the same time. You and your friend might find yourself rediscovering the essentials within your souls and the spirit of the world around you. Assist your friend or loved one in creating a sacred morning space for spiritual contemplation. The word contemplate means to create space for the divine to enter. So think of this space, if only a corner of a room, as a place dedicated exclusively to the needs of the soul. You can encourage your friend or loved one to retreat to their space several times a week and honor their journey through their grief. We create altars and sacred spaces without even necessarily calling them that, as part of certain holiday preparations. If it makes sense to do so and is appropriate, encourage your friend or loved one to incorporate themes from that holiday in their sacred space, or even create a dedicated space for the dead or dying within the larger holiday space. Finally, encourage your friend or loved one to set the tone for each day by adopting a gratitude practice or meditating. If this is a new practice for them, help them create a simple phrase or prayer for them, such as, "Today I will allow myself to experience joy," or "Today I will appreciate my life." Words of gratitude can look like, "Thank you for this day, help me to appreciate it and make it count." And a gratitude practice does not need to be fancy, but it does need to be specific. Instead of saying, "I'm grateful for everything," pick 3 simple things to start. I'm grateful for my pillow. I'm grateful for my dog. I'm grateful for the yummy cookie I just ate. You can also use apps like Headspace or Insight Timer to kickstart a meditation practice. In conclusion, be patient with the process. Your friend may not be able to show appreciation for the help you're offering and may not take all of your suggestions, but they do appreciate what you're doing, and what you're doing is helping. If in doubt, simply being fully present for your friend or loved one can be the biggest gift you can offer them this season. And on that note, I will return it back to Willow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daniel. So talking more about rituals of remembrance and that sort of thing, I have some ideas to share with you and also some resources, and we'll include those in a follow-up email to you all, because there's some beautiful, very concise links on how to create different rituals and such. One of the things that the idea of having ritual, what that means, or having ceremony means, is something like just carving out a moment in time and calling it sacred, however you do that, whatever that means to you. And sometimes it's just a moment of silence, thinking about people who have died and just taking a moment of silence. That creates a feeling of sacredness and connection on some level. You can light a candle. You can light a candle with your family around and say, this light represents whomever you're grieving, and say, let's remember them with joy and the light that they shared with us. When I was talking about the death of my father at the beginning of the Salon, another of the things that I did is they asked, he had already made arrangements to be buried in the cemetery and to be cremated. And the mortuary contacted us and asked if we wanted to see him. And just about everybody in my family was on the side of the no, and I, of course, was on the side of the yes. And I said, I would love to see him, and who would like to come with me? And once I made that offer, other people came. My mother, my brother, and my nephew were the people who chose to come. And the rest said they didn't want to see him like that. They wanted to remember him alive. So we went to see him, and it was again one of those moments of awkward silence where people felt the need to do something and to connect. And uncork, but didn't quite know how. And again, I just intuitively, I walked up and I put my hand on my dad's chest and I just said, thank you. And I thanked him for things that came to my mind that I could remember. And I stepped back, and again, people that were there just did it. There wasn't a need to plan anything or do anything fancy. It was just what feels powerful in this moment, what feels like it acknowledges what's real in this moment. And after each of us did that, I said, I'd like to take a lock of his hair. And again, you know, there was kind of this look at me like, you're just weird. My family's always kind of wondered about me that way. But I said, yeah, I'm thinking about a remembrance. I'm thinking about these tiny Victorian frames where you could put a lock of hair and you could even wear it as jewelry, or you could put it someplace special. And I just loved the idea of having that. And I asked if anyone wanted a lock of hair or if they wanted to assist me. And while they weren't sure if they wanted a lock of hair, they wanted to assist. And we got paper towels and laid them out. And I snipped a little bit of hair and we gently wrapped it into its own little paper towel and tucked it away. And we did that on about 3 little tufts of his hair and said thank you again. We said goodbye to him and said that we would use these remembrances to remember him, to keep him alive in our hearts and in our memory. And we left that place again, just feeling connected and whole somehow in that connection of grieving. You know, grieving alone is so painful and hard, and that sense of isolation. And when we can break down some of those walls and connect to each other in that grief, it's just powerful. And finding rituals or ceremonies or just that moment of silence that you can do with other people you know are grieving, just offering that. The first Christmas that we got together after my dad died, he died in the summer, I asked my mom if she would be comfortable if we sat at the family table that we'd been sitting at. It had been toted around from country to country. This is one piece of furniture that went everywhere. We'd had it forever. And my dad always sat at one particular end of the table. And I said, would you be comfortable if we set a place for him there? And she said, I would love that. I would love that. So we set a place for him. We brought out the silverware and the plate and all of the things in the cup and all of that. And it wasn't long before, as people came in and kind of acclimated to the idea of that people wanted to share the food on the table with him. And in that sense of just acknowledging his absence, of sharing food with him, of saying like, I remember you loved the turkey and cranberry sauce together, and I'm going to give you a little bite just like you liked it. Each of us remembering him in that way and in that moment. And it was just, again, organic, spontaneous, and accurate for the moment. You can do something that Daniel had talked about, and I think maybe Emily did too, of just setting a space that acknowledges that person. Like light a couple of candles and put a photograph and maybe a couple of their favorite things, or make a slideshow and have it playing in the background somewhere of that person's life. Or maybe they could even be a themed slideshow. If you're gathering for Thanksgiving, it could be of Thanksgiving's past with them, and have it set up in such a way that people can be with it or not. So depending on how they are in touch or not in touch with that willingness to grieve. You can sit in a circle and just take turns sharing stories about someone. You can do that around the table. One of the most beautiful rituals that I remember a friend sharing with me when her stepson died was they lit a central candle that represented the person who had died. And each person had their own candle. And as they would go and light it from that central candle, they would speak to the part of them that was still alive in them. So they would say like, you know, I remember when he taught me how to bow fish, or whatever it was, and to light that candle and to see each person have that memory, that lesson, that wisdom that is open in them and they are carrying with them. And again, it doesn't, you can get birthday candles and do it in just a few minutes. It doesn't have to be elaborate, but it can be profound and meaningful and connecting. you can ask people to bring a remembrance item to a gathering and then tell the story of it. It could be a photograph, it could be a letter, it could be something not tangible in memory, a piece of jewelry, anything like that, to ask people to bring that and then share those stories. One of the things that I love to do, and children love it, and then adults end up loving it, even though they're kind of mad at themselves for loving it, is I like to write letters to the deceased on what's called flash paper. And if you're not familiar what that is, you buy it in a magic tricks shop. It is paper that's basically covered in gunpowder, but you can write on it, and as soon as you touch it to flame, it just evaporates. It's just gone in a poof. There's no ash, there's no nothing. And there's something very, that feels very magical and powerful about that. Maybe I'm just kind of a little bit of person who loves to play with fire, but I've done this a number of times and it has felt really good. Like there's some kind of satisfaction that something about that poof is going to release that message somehow into their resonance again. So flash paper or writing just on a piece of paper and burning them all together. You can decide to have a memorial themed party. You could decide together to create a memorial gift. Like maybe you gather and you really want to honor this person and you brainstorm together like, well, there is a, wildlife reserve and they always loved that place and would go there. What if we had a bench dedicated to them and put there, or some other way of collaborating in a remembrance? There are as many ways to create a ritual or a ceremony of remembrance as there are ideas and people. So just thinking about what feels meaningful in the moment, what feels like a point of connection that you can make with others is a really great place. And I want to share a number of resources. And again, we'll send these out in a follow-up email. I love them. So I'm going to share my screen here and share these with you. Hang on a second here. So there's an organization called Reimagine, and their website is letsreimagine.org. And they have such a plethora of grief resources. And I just pulled up one page to kind of show you some of the things that they had available. Under their remembrance, they have different kinds of celebrations, condolences, counseling, grief, keepsakes, legacy, meetup groups, memorial service, remembrances. They have workshops and a place for people to collectively share their resources. There's an artist's grief deck. There's grief aspects of the African-American experience. There's so many different resources on this page. And the whole website, if you go down that rabbit hole, you'll just be amazed. There's brilliant, brilliant things to participate in here. They do have an upcoming online grief workshop. Let's see. I don't think I have that pulled up in a tab, but you can easily find it. Again, that will come out in our sharing of resources. One of the things that they offered in their remembrance, I want to see if I can get that. I have never seen this before, and it was creating a portrait of the dead with their ashes from a cremains. And yep, here it is. So this is the name of the project is Icons into Ash, or Icons in Ash. And this is an example of one. And they are used to complete a handmade mosaic portrait. They use beeswax and they actually separate the ashes into gradient grays of color. And if they need to add dark or light, they have organic materials that they use to add to the contrast. This was a new way of seeing a remembrance that I have never heard of and I thought was really beautiful. So they've got a lot of fantastic resources there about honoring. The next website comes from a blog. This is Funeral Alone, their grief and healing and mourning rituals. And this is 9 simple mourning rituals for the modern griever. We're going to send you that link too. And it's just got very simple, single paragraph, cook their favorite meal, carry a remembrance item, create art in their memory. There's all of these little things, and they're very easy to start conversations with other loved ones who might want to collaborate in some sort of remembrance. The next website has a downloadable PDF, and this is from an Australian organization called grief.org. And this is another very beautiful, very comprehensive, short, downloadable remembrance rituals and memorials, ideas for remembering them as good and bad, all of their parts, what makes rituals and ideas for creating them, what makes a memorial and ideas for creating those, workshop topics, all kinds of other resources that are here. So they've got some beautiful things for ritual. And then this one is from an organization called multicare.org. This is another downloadable PDF, Rituals and Memorials for Healing, Living with Grief Through Days of Celebration and Meaning. And again, these resources can be tailored more to the holidays. This is organized by a home health and hospice organization. They talk about all different ways of doing kinds of rituals. This is a 12-page document. They have things that you consider using in terms of materials. It's really great and really helpful to just get you brainstorming. And if you don't feel like brainstorming, you can just copy some of their rituals that feel right to you and do those too. And that again is the portraits that I wanted to share. So those are some of the resources that we'll be sending out to you. I hope that you enjoy them. And I'm going to turn it back to Andrea, who's going to talk a little bit more about our fundraising push for the end of the year and wrap up our salon so that we can move into Q&A. Andrea, it's up to you.
Thank you so much, Willow. At the heart of the Virtual Death Doula Network is service for all people. That is what we are deeply committed to. By donating to the Virtual Death Doula Network, you are directly supporting those who would not otherwise be able to access doula services for end-of-life care. Your contribution ensures that we at the Virtual Death Doula Network are able to provide exceptional service to those in need, no matter what their situation is. You can find the link to donate in the chat here on our website. It will be in the follow-up email to the salon as well. And if you do donate and you are willing to leave a message or testimonial that we can share, that would be wonderful. You can leave your first name and last initial or any way you'd like to be recognized. There is a place to leave that information in the PayPal donation part, or you're welcome to put it right into the chat. And of course, it is the end of the year, and all of these are tax-deductible donations. Before we go to the Q&A, we wanted to give you guys a little sneak peek preview about next month. Our salon next month is going to be focused, sorry, but my phone was moving. There you go. Our salon next month is going to be focused on guilt and regret surrounding not being present when someone that we love passes on and dies. Sometimes you can't get there in time. Sometimes somebody has their finite last breath and there's just no way to know, and there's no way that you could have been there. We will also cover talking about survivor's grief when there's an accident, somebody does die and someone else doesn't. So that's a little preview for our December salon, and we'll have more information about that coming up in our newsletter, as well as in our Facebook group and our mailing list. And now we are ready to turn it over to Q&A. So if anybody has anything they'd like to share, discuss, you are welcome to unmute yourself. You can use the little bar at the bottom to raise your hand if you like, and you're also welcome to type it into the chat if you'd like one of us to share it for you, or if you'd like it to just be private.
would also be curious to know if you have rituals of remembrance or ceremonies that you've done that you would be willing to share with everyone. I know people are pretty creative, so I'm curious ways that you've remembered your beloved dead. Stu?
Hey there. Thank you for the salon. It's nice to know some of these things before my mom dies, which I have no idea when it'll be. And I have an idea for future salon. Some of us deal with excruciatingly slow deaths, and that has its own special tenderness and its own special challenges. And after a few years, they both run at the same time a lot. I think that's the main thing I wanted to say, except for that going outdoors in the trees has saved me. And then there's also times when I think it's tiredness of the soul creates an invisible wall between me and beauty that my mind can acknowledge, but my soul can't get to. And that usually means I need to sleep. But anyway, I wanted to share those things. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Stu.
Thank you. I wanted to read some things in the chat quickly. One thing that was recommended was the Death Dialogues Project. They apparently have something called Tiny Death Stories. It's a photo, 100 words, true story, and your name / handle. It's tinydeathstory@gmail.com. You can see the info in the chat if you'd like. And then someone else said, I've celebrated Dia de los Muertos, in small group, creating altars and discussions in cemeteries to honor my lost loved ones before, and have found a lot of support and care in that practice. So thank you so much for those comments.
May I speak now? Andrea, thank you for answering my questions through email. I'm a pain in the dupa with these things because I forget so often. I had always been a death doula and just didn't know it. I've sat bedside for so many years with so many people I love. And I was reading a book one day that Sandra Black wrote, a doctor from Buffalo, New York, and one of her characters was a death doula. And I thought, that's what I am. No, I just didn't know it. So I took the international course and just got some basics for myself. I don't want to make a business out of it. My hope is to start working with hospice so that I can just be beside people if they're struggling. And these are wonderful tips for ways to talk to people who are struggling and don't know how to deal with it. And this is so much information. It's such a godsend. I am also on a very personal level dealing with primary progressive MS, which does not relapse. And I'm doing great because I'm on Ocrevus, but I can't seem to get my husband or my children to understand that I may not live out the rest of my life. And I'm trying to get them to understand that I'm not afraid. And I'm not. I think death puts me with the people that I love that I've been missing. And I just want to make the best of the time I'm with. So some of these things are also going to be so critical in helping them see that death isn't frightening. And it's not the end in my mind. And I just can't tell you how invaluable this was for me. I really, truly appreciate this. Thank you all.
Thank you. What an exceptionally beautiful share on all accounts. And you bring up something that is very important and also very common when the person who has something terminal has made peace with it, is comfortable with it, but their family members cannot or are not. And one of the things we say a lot is that death is not good or bad. It is hard. It is hard for people in so many different ways, but it is not good or bad. It is something natural. It is something every single one of us will experience. So thank you so much for your share. And if there's any way any of the doulas here at the Virtual Death Doula Network can support you and your loved ones, we are happy to. We do a lot of stuff with kind of bringing the conversation together to help people kind of move through some of those tough feelings in a safe space.
Thank you.
Of course.
Hi there. I just wanted to share, this is definitely helpful as the holidays are just around the corner. My dad died 5 days before Christmas about 9 years ago, and it still is such a kind of like triggering season all around, where exactly Christmas songs are played everywhere, and I still find it kind of bittersweet. It gets me laughing sometimes too, of just like, I cannot believe this song has me crying in the supermarket or wherever. But I've done a lot of healing work for myself around it, and I find that they're just the last kind of bittersweet tokens of like, oh, I forgot about this memory or this event or whatever. And I embrace them, and I find them just like little gifts, and do a lot of journaling and a lot of storytelling with my husband, who never got to meet my dad. So the good feedback I get from that is I feel like I've already known him because of how much you memorialize him. And no one taught me how to do that. And I feel very proud that that's the experience that I'm sharing with my family. And so, yeah, it's just kind of like gearing up for all of this time of year. And this has been very helpful. And thank you for putting this on, especially around this topic. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's especially complicated when you lose somebody on or near a holiday or on or near a birthday. It's just a lifelong time of dealing with that wonderful awfulness. Yeah.
I want to thank you for touching on something important in that, and that is how you mentioned sharing with your husband so he could kind of get to know. And that for me has been one of the biggest struggles, is not having any family. Who do I share my family with? Who do I talk about these memories and show these photo albums to? Because it's often that people, most people don't necessarily want to look through my old photo albums with me. So I think that's beautiful. And I appreciate that, because it encourages me to do the same and to kind of share more, because I think that even though it is bittersweet, it is really healing to bring it into the forefront and to really embrace it and to find those smiles in that kind of challenging places. And I know we've all mentioned it, but I am going to mention it again, because I think it is one of the most challenging pieces of grief. But joy is a component of grief, and it is something that is so hard to let in. We almost forget how to let it in, or it feels scary almost to feel this feeling of joy in the midst of this breaking apart. And I just want to encourage you to kind of pick it up wherever you can. And there's nothing wrong with it. It is crucial to allow joy in. It is a beautiful piece of healing and of grief. There can be joy in grief, in celebrating the memories, in the smiles from telling certain stories. So I find that for me often can be hard. And a lot of people expressed even feeling guilty for feeling joy, but it is so crucial. So thank you again for your wonderful share.
Any other stories of remembrance or questions about doulas or the network or anything?
Hi, I have a question. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, yes, we can go ahead, please.
Hello. Hi, morning. My name is Sonia. Thank you. I unfortunately didn't catch the entire part because I ended up having a client this morning on Zoom. And I really appreciate this network, and I'd like to learn more about connecting. This is the first time I was able to make a salon. I'm a nurse and a therapist, and have worked in hospice, and I just think this is such important work. And I do have clients that are going through grief from loss or pending loss. So I really appreciate all the shares and and the info. And one of my questions is how to do. Somebody mentioned an international course or whatever. I'm just how to dive deeper into the work and kind of be connected on that level, because it is a kind of like being a therapist. It is a very it's more isolative. It's not like we're all groups together, can come together. So it'd be nice to know how to connect in that way.
Daniel,
If anyone
did you
has
I was just
I'm
waiting
like,
for you.
I'm just trying to parse the question exactly. You want more information about the
Well,
network?
I would say that what you did miss at the beginning was that the co-founders, as well as me, we were all trained with the University of Vermont Larner College of Medicine. They have a professional end-of-life doula certificate, and they also have a professional end-of-life companion animal doula certificate.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and they're really beautiful courses, and there are other reputable training groups out there. I think the person earlier mentioned INELDA. You can just look them up on the internet.
Okay.
And Alua Arthur has a program called Going with Grace. There's a number of really great doula training programs out there, but all of us share the University of Vermont training.
Okay, that's wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Yeah. And thank you for talking about ritual. That's a real big, important piece, I think. Yeah.
I've mentioned this at other salons, but what I've noticed, especially when people are in that process of dying or they're bedridden and they haven't gotten up for a long time or gotten out, is just bringing a piece of nature to them. If it's winter, a pine cone in a bowl of snow. I used to do that to one of my clients who was 95. She'd been bedridden for a while. And when the leaves were turning, I would bring her one or two just glorious maple leaves, and they were treasures to her. So there's ways of again, creating a sense of the sacred with just simple objects, you know, a beautiful rock that you saw, a quarter-sized piece of moss to put in their hand and just let them feel how spongy and squishy it is again. So many beautiful ways of helping people still feel that connection to nature, which is so powerful and so healing.
Absolutely.
Well, I've also brought like jars of seawater, you know, to put fingers in and things. It's I really think that's wonderful.
Wow. I've never heard of that. That's wonderful. Jars of seawater. That's beautiful.
I see in the chat here from Katrina, I'm so grateful to be here. I'm in the process of caretaking for my grandmother who is on hospice, and my grandfather's getting close as well in his own way. I'm preparing myself for what is coming. I've lost friends and distant family, but no one directly close. Thank you for all these rituals and references. And close meaning in my direct family. Thank you for sharing, Katrina. That's a lot to hold.
Can I just add that the online course I took was International Association of Professionals, something, but it was far less expensive. And it's just that that's what I could afford. It gave me a certificate. I don't know that that means a hill of beans to anybody because I'm still doing what I've always done, but I didn't feel that I could afford Anelda and the other groups. And yet I wanted the knowledge. So International Association of Professionals is affordable, and it was a great online course, truly. It taught me important things like how I could start a business if I so desired. And it was just things that were unknown to me otherwise. And I also just want to ask, Emily, will you be sharing the post you had up originally when you shared your screen? What did I wrote it
Yeah,
down.
that will be in the newsletter, and we'll also send a document to all the participants here
That Bill of
after the
Rights.
meeting.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
exactly. That will be included in the resources we'll send out.
Super. Thank you.
You probably have an abundance of ideas for different salons, and you've probably done a lot. But in addition to a salon for people dealing with a long, slow disappearance and death, if you have a future one about coordinating a care team for somebody, you know, in their mid-90s who's only partly around anymore, I would greatly appreciate it. And also it would be a good experience if half of it were sharing stories or exchange about how people solved issues or what issue they were in the middle of. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really great topic. And I often say it's what I do most as a doula is often organizing care, coordinating care, making sure that there's a really good system of sharing information and sharing resources. So yeah, that's definitely a great topic. Thank you. We'll cover it, I'm pretty sure. I can't speak for us all, but it's a good one. And in the chat, it shows there's a lot of support for care team coordination salons. And yes, it is a big job. Any closing words, anyone?
I do want to mention again, a few people have reached out. We do offer grief, death, and dying anxiety support. All of our doulas are available for this. You can go on our website and you can sign up for a free 15-minute consultation if you want to learn a little bit more about what it would look like, or you can go ahead and schedule a 30 or 60-minute appointment via phone, whatever method you are most comfortable with. But that is something we do offer, and it is a wonderful resource because it is hard to learn how to move through grief. And all of us doulas, while we have our professional background, we also all have a very personal relationship with death as well. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about any of those things or how to make that happen.